You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
For the past 10 days, I have been faced with a situation that has prevented me from fully carrying out the responsibilities and the mandate that were entrusted to me by Mrs. Plante.
So that's Dominique Ollivier from just a little earlier this afternoon, 3 o'clock press conference announcing what everyone, of course, had been told would happen, which is her resigning as head of the Executive Council. So, Jim, your reaction? I know this story broke last week. I'm trying to wrap my head around this because she said Friday she's going to meet with the Finance Committee to go over some of these expenses. And I'm like, isn't that kind of, that's kind of after the fact? Why are we doing this then as opposed to now? Why is she resigning now? What'd you think?
So when you and Val were frolicking down in Anglia, did you guys pay $347 for an oyster dinner?
No, they didn't. They didn't have anything like.
No, but even if they did, it was dinner for two. But Madame Ollivier paid. Well, she didn't pay it. I paid it. You paid it. Natasha paid it. Our listeners paid it. It's funny because when you look at this, and you're quite right, Aaron. You say it's all of it after the fact. She got busted, and my hat's off to the Quebecor investigative unit on this particular deal, because they went in, they dug, they found out, and it is just. And I have to preface this by saying as well, because we're talking about public funds here, okay? But in my line of work, believe me, I know some journalists who are absolute virtuosos when it comes to being creative with their expense accounts, okay? And the rationale is, well, it's private sector, blah, 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 blah. But the one question you have to ask yourself is, can I get away with this? Always, that's the question. It is clear in these expenses. It is clear in this orgy of expenditures around the world. That question was never asked, and for that alone, Madame Ollivier should have resigned. I know she's saying she got all kinds of misogynistic and hateful and racist messages and so on and so forth. That's terrible. That's part of the online world that we live in. But the fact remains that the taxpayers in Montreal. Can you imagine if Madame Ollivier retained her station and was overseeing, with the tabling of the budget and so on and so forth, and was telling Montrealers we're going to have to tighten our belts? This was absolutely essential. And the big question for me right now is who is going to take over Madame Olivier's job, because certainly with this administration, there really isn't. The only head of the executive committee is the executive herself. It's Valérie Plante. The question is, will this, how can I put it, this completely empty, money-gobbling shell called the Office of Public Consultations continue to exist as is? And if it does, will you be taking an audit look, not just at their operation, but all these other offices and agencies and societies and whatever? Because I get the impression that when you see this kind of grifting, it's like fleas. If you see one, you can relatively be sure of the presence of at least half a dozen or 12 dozen more. But I really hope there is a full-scale audit going on, because whereas I'm not the kind of guy who would say, if somebody paid $200 for a dinner and that's front page news, he did it on the company, on the city's dime. But when you see tens of thousands of dollars like this just thrown away, and with absolutely no, once again, the question was never asked, can I get away with this? And now for Dominique Ollivier and Valérie Plante to discover, well, no, you can't get away with this, I think is a very signal lesson. And I will be fascinated to hear what Plante is going to say this afternoon.
Yeah, she's speaking as we speak right now. We're rolling on it, so we'll play some of that back. I found it very interesting that, I think it bears mentioning the current head of the OCPM is also under investigation for excessive spending, and that Dominique Ollivier felt compelled to defend the existence. She said, I think the work that the OCPM does is very important. I thought that in itself was, why even say that? Why bring that into it at this point and defend the existence of that office?
Absolutely. If you're going to say anything to justify it, say the oysters were delicious, But no, the thing is, and are you referring to Guy Grenier?
Oh, you know what? I just remember having read somewhere as I was going through all the stuff
because
in the Journal Montréal.
They're all under audit, but he's a former business partner of Madame Ollivier. So, there's no ray of sunshine in any of this story. But as I say, yes, by all means, take a look at the OCPM, and I'm sure Valerie Plante will address it. I just hope somebody in the scrum this afternoon says, what about all the, will you order an immediate, so-called, in quotation marks, surprise audit of all these things? Because it is clear that if there is an attitude that exists in this pretty public organization that you could get away with this kind of nonsense, God help us on some of the others that work, how can I put it, a little more on the shadows.
Just quickly to clarify, it is Isabelle Beaulieu. That's the name that I had heard.
Sorry,
She's
okay.
the current head of the OCPM, and her spending is under investigation.
My question here, when we first heard Dominique Ollivier, and of course she alluded to the fact that she got all these text messages, misogynistic, et cetera, and I looked at Natasha and I said, it almost seems like that's cover for you saying, okay, I'm going to resign. Why even bother adding that? I didn't understand what that had to do with her leaving over the fact that there's been some financial fraud here.
Well, it's like, once again, Aaron, whether it's the CAC or whether it's the Plante administration, politicians these days have got to create a narrative. So it's not going to be completely, politicians, very well paid and compensated politician gets busted because of previous expenses in another job that were completely over the top, even by Quebec standards. So let's put a little bit of blessure on her part. So hence, and I have no doubt that it happened, but we live in a world this happens all the time. I'm sure that every time the mayor of Montreal opens her mouth, there are terrible things that are said online about her and what she had to say. But all that said, like you say, it's more, I think.
I just want to interject there. I don't think that the mayor's being told to go back to where she came from. Like, I don't want to defend.
No, but it's not that specific thing. It's the idea that you bring it up at all in the midst of announcing that you're stepping down.
Because she's saying that's part of the reason she can't continue.
To be fair, with all due respect, I have seen comments where Valerie Plante has been told to go back to Rouen, where she comes from, and get the hell out of Montreal. But that's the one side. True. But if there's a racism, the last thing I thought about in this entire expose, once again, by Quebecor, was a racist or misogynistic. Yeah. I thought, here's another bunch of politicians, worse than that, another bunch of bureaucrats who simply thought they could get away with it on our dime, and they got busted big time.
Yeah, and
end of story.
And that should be the end of the story. Let me ask you one last thing while we still have a minute here, real quick. We talked about this earlier on, speculating. The whole situation over pro-Palestinian rallies, just rallies in general, demonstrations over the past couple of weeks, re-Israel, Hamas. Where has Fadi Daguerre been on this, Montreal's police chief? That's the question being asked, Jim. Do you have any idea?
Yes, I know. It was asked me by David Hurtel on Friday, and I would be fascinated to hear an answer from the SPVM. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anybody ask the question. I don't know. Is he out of the picture? Is he out of the
He's on vacation. He's on vacation till the end of the month.
That's what they told us today. Till the end of the month, Jim, and he was away all last week as well.
Well, you know what they'll say. Well, Monsieur Rand, it's the 21st century. He can monitor events from where he is, blah, 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 blah. Although I got to tell you, he got sworn in earlier this year, right? Mm-hmm. He's getting a month, and he's getting how much vacation? The end of the month. That's 3 weeks?
I thought the same thing.
Almost
He's already been gone for a week. So
I don't know.
So let's say a month.
And he hasn't weighed in, even from where he might be, Jim, if that was the case. We've heard nothing from him.
Not on these particular incidents. I know before he left, he was saying, "Listen, you shouldn't be scared." The usual cassette. Montreal is a safe city. You should not be hiding the fact that you are Jewish. You should feel secure in this city. And it's basically the same line that Valerie Plante has been using. Although she's saying now, and I think quite justifiably, that the Jewish community in Montreal is under attack from all kinds of quarters. But yeah, everybody's jumpy, everybody's scared. I think, if nothing else, if he's on vacation, he should do a remote. He should do something. But or God help us, come back from vacation. That's also a possibility. You can take your time afterwards. But yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, once again, there's optics and there's optics. And in this particular instance, Chief Daguerre, who I always thought had a very, very good eye for optics, seems to have, how can I put it, put on the wrong pair of glasses.
Drop the ball on this one. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it.
Adam.